Hello everyone, this is Christian Meldick's Interactive, and in this video we are going to finish up with the domain modeling that we need at this point. So by the time that we're done here, we'll have added to our state. We've added our categories, markets, segment, territories, types, the securities themselves. We'll see how we're handling things like this categories, which is a combination of previous things. So it has a segment, territory, and type, which will start off with null. We'll deal with next video populating them using a UX getter. But like I said, in this video we're going to focus on adding the rest of the models to our state. Before we get started here, I do want to say thank you for watching the video. Also, thank you if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, I hope that you will consider subscribing to the channel. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started here. So in this video, we're going to do a lot more, or I'm going to do a lot more copy and pasting, because I want to get done with creating the models for everything and setting up our state so that we can actually see something interesting and on screen. Not just create models all day long. So the first one that we're going to do here is create a new file, and I'm going to call that security-territory-model.ts. So that's the same as the previous videos where we created these security descriptors. So it just contains an ID and text. Go into our security constants and create those. So what we need there. So it's important to note that these things do become less and less important. At some point in time, we will want to allow the user of the application to create more segments, more markets, that kind of thing. But I will be using these constants in a couple different places. That's the reason why I've created this constants file here. And now we go to our security types. So security types needs to import the model that we just created. We need to specify the interface. It's the same as the interfaces before, has an index and items. And we need to add it to the interface for our state. We'll save that. So we have types out of the way. Which one? Territory is out of the way. I guess almost. We have to create the initial state. So security territory initial state.ts. So let's bring in the imports here. So the constants that we've created, the model itself, and the interface for a state. Next, we will specify an empty typed array to hold those territories, and a create territory function so we can create new ones. We'll say index starts at 1. We'll create a territory from the first constant and then from the second. And then we do need to export the initial state, which of course just is the index and the items. So now territories are done. So the last descriptor that we need to create is this one here, which is a security type-model.ts. Paste that in. So now we have a type descriptor. More constants. So into our constants file for types. So we'll have 3 different types. And as I mentioned previously, the code for this is there's a link in the description below for the articles so that you can see there what I'm typing in here. So you don't necessarily have to watch terribly closely here. It's the same pattern over and over. In the security types, we import the model, specify the interface, basically the same as the others, and add it to the state interface. Save that. make our initial state security type initial state.ts. Import the constants and types that we need. So we need the 3 constants, the model itself, and the interface for a state, type state. Our empty array, function for creating more, creating 3 of them using the constants that we imported, and exporting the state. So that part's done. Now these next 2 are actually a little bit larger. So now, and this one is a security category model.ts. So I think I mentioned in the previous video that a category is just going to be the thing that holds the 3 of the other descriptors that we've created, which is the segment, territory, and type here. We're going to create a interface for our configuration object. So what do we need to pass in to our category to make a new one? So we'll have to pass in an ID, a segment ID, territory ID, and a type ID. So let's export a class of security category model. So that one will consist of, like I said, private ID. So we'll put that one first. It will have a segment, which is a security segment model, or null, which will default to null. Then we'll also specify a segment ID, which is a number. So we need to do that same pattern for the others. So we'll have a territory, which is either the model or null, a type, which is either model or null, and their associated IDs. Let's go ahead and create the constructor here. So the constructor just creates or takes in the configuration object and populates all of our IDs. Okay. So let's add some getters here. So we'll access to ID, segment ID, all of that, and then we'll have the type. And now the reason that I copy that in funnily is that we're going to have a property called text, or a getter called text. So that just gives us something easy to display on screen when we're saying, showing a category, in particular in a list of categories. So what we'll do is create a new object in here called text. Inside of that, we'll have one property undefined. We'll see why here in a second. So const territory, that's equal to this dot territory. So now this dot territory could be undefined. So if it is, we'll just say we'll use the object we just created and pull off the text property. We'll do the same thing for the type. This dot type or text, and put it in alphabetical order. Segment, and that's this dot segment or text. Now the text that we're going to display, so we'll just return a template string, and I guess I did by territory, then by type, and then by segment. So now we have our text getter done, and we do need a way to specify the segment, territory, and ID, otherwise it'll always be null. The problem that I run into here is that, so what I would like to do is say set segment and pass in a segment, and that's a security segment model. And then what we would do is then say this dot segment equals segment. Problem is that TypeScript is complaining that since we've defined the segment to be either a segment model or null, what we'd have to do is to pass this either a segment model or null, which I do not want to do. going to be setting the thing. So what we'll do is come down and create us a method. So we'll set segment as a method. And do this. So let's also return this so we can chain these things together. See if I actually remember that I did that and when creating one or setting these properties. So we've set it for the segment. We need set for territory and set for type. And as I mentioned previously, I'm trying to keep up with saving what we need to save to disk to recreate everything. So we'll just save basically the configuration. So now we've created our category model. Let's come back in and to our store constants here. So previous video I created the states for our routes, for the market segments, territories, and types. Should have gone ahead and done it for these two, but I didn't, so we're going to do that now. So we'll have a state for securities and categories. Save that. Go into our security types file now. We're going to go ahead and import both of them while we're at it. And now we're also going to, let's import, come on, I think my mouse is dying. So we need our categories, security category. I'm also going to, since we're in this file right now, going to export an enum that we're going to need to make securities themselves. We have our interface for our category, and now we need to put that on the state. Perfect. So let's go ahead and save that. Now biggie, creating the initial state. So new file, category, initial state ts. So we'll import things that we need here. So what we need is the config for creating a category, the model itself, and the interface for a category state. We're going to import a giant list of constants here, right? Because we need, as I said, we're dealing with category being it's going to hold all the segments, territories, and types. So to use them, we need to import our initial states for the segments, territories, and types. One of the main reasons that I use specify those constants in a different file, so we can use them when creating the initial state for each thing, and now I can use them for creating the category. So all we're doing is looking in the initial state and finding each of the constants so that I can put it in a constant itself so that we can better understand what we're creating instead of having segments, dot items, and then the brackets and 0 and brackets and 1 doesn't really tell us anything. Note that at the end of these I do have an exclamation point. Without it, the find returns either the thing we're looking for or undefined. Since I know that thing exists, I'm just going to put the exclamation point on there so that we just get back the thing instead of undefined as well. So we need the same thing for territories and types. So we have the territories and types now. Do the same thing that we usually do. Create an empty typed array and the function for creating more of them. And then just create categories that I want. So now we've created the categories and we need to export our initial state. So now the categories are done. And we can move on to the biggest one of all. So new file. This is the security-model.ts. So we'll import our things, import stuff. So we need the category model, we need the market model, and we need that recommendations enum that we just added to the security types. Instead of typing it out, copy and paste here. So the configuration for creating our security, passing the IDs for the category and the market, has an ID itself, and then we'll have a recommendation and a symbol on it. So let's just do this here. So we've done them previously, so let's specify our fields. So again, the category and the market, they can be either the model that they are or null. Rest of them are just going to be set in our constructor. This time, well, in the constructor, we just have our configuration object and we set everything. And this time we don't have anything special as far as a getter goes, so let's just create getters for everything. And probably should have read-onlys on things like the ID, category ID. May add them in later, might bother me. I might forget and then never think of it again. We need to specify both a way to set the category and the market, so just as we did the category itself, and then the persistence object here, which is just the configuration that was passed in basically. And now we can specify in the security types, we need to import that model. So we called it security models. I guess that puts it there. Security model state has to have an interface. So there it is. And we need to export everything. So now we have that exported from the state. And as usual, last thing up is to create the initial data. So new file, security model initial state.ts, and mess everything up by making it an st. Security model, where you at? So rename that ts. Perfect. Okay, so our importing. So we need to import the configuration for the model, the security model itself, a model state, and the recommendation enum. We need the constants for the markets. We need our initial data from the categories and the markets. I'm just going to, in order to save space on the screen, so since I have the text so large and we don't want to go over our 120 character limit there and get our squiggly, we're going to redo the recommendations. So now we have the buy, hold, and sell. I'm going to rename or specify what the categories are. So these are just, I've gotten used to them. So we have renamed those. That's domestic, equity, large cap, and so on and so forth. I think some of them are actually wrong with the way I'm doing things now, but I guess at least I know what they're talking about. So now we need the markets themselves. So let's bring in our markets. Same deal with our exclamation point at the end there. We specify our empty array and the create security function here. Function slightly different, again, solely to save space. We're not just passing in the config, we're going to separate out the ID. Then I have our config, and then the config that we're passing in is going to be an I security model config without the ID property here. Because what I wanted to do here to save space is create a configuration object for the securities that we're passing in. So this is one of them. Has our category ID, a last value, market ID, recommendation, and the symbol. Right? So let me create a whole bunch of them. Ones I've looked at in the past. So we have those, and now when we actually create them, what we do is create them down here. So again, we've broken it up sort of in 2 steps just for the size of everything. So now we've created our securities, and we need to export the initial state. Save that. Perfect. So now let's go into our index.ts file, and what we want to do is just export all of the models. So they're security models, so they'll fit in right there. And we'll go down to our store type, so the overall store now. So we've defined in our security types, we've defined what the state looks like. So let's import that over here. And now our store state is just going to extend the security state. So now it has all of these states on it as well, or objects. And we'll create a new file here, which is going to be our security module.ts. Let's close that. Guess we can close that. So bringing in the state constants that are pertain to our securities. We'll also bring in the interface from the state. We need the initial data, so what we created for all of the models. And of course I've renamed them here. And now we need to export them all appropriately. And I've decided to call the state security state because it conflicts with this security state here. Maybe it should be vice versa, who knows, who cares. So that's good. And the last thing that we have to do is add this all to the store itself. So we should have our little squiggly down there telling us we've made a mistake so far. So just like we've imported from, whoops, actually I want it right here, from our routes and accounts, we'll import from our security module. We now have that security state, and all we have to do is use the spread operator, and now our store should be good to go. So we've got the project open here, and if we refresh, and we can see that on our base state we started off with having the accounts and the states, and now we have our securities, categories, markets, segment, territory, and types. One of the important things to make sure is that the index is 1 greater than the size of each of the arrays, which it is, and so it seems like everything is working out correctly. And then so if we look in a secure category, you can see that basically we have the segment ID, territory ID, type ID, and as expected, of course, that the territory and segment and such are all null. So I think in the next video we will start by, I don't know, doing something interesting, adding a getter to our Vuex store so that we can actually populate the territory and the segment so that we can then display things on the screen to the user. What else we do besides that, we'll have to, I guess, wait and see. But until then, I will talk to you later. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. I know that your time is valuable. If you liked the video, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button, as well as share the video with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. And once again, thank you, and I will talk to you in the next video.